What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for tuning in. It is a very chilly day here on the farm. Friday afternoon, just got off work a little bit early and we got some sunshine, which means it's time to try to get another project done on the truck. So if you watched the last video, I installed an EGT probe, showed you guys how to do it. Pretty simple process, but if you're interested in knowing how to do it, you can go back and check out that last video. I told you guys in that video I was kind of prepping for installing some tunes on the truck. I always say if you're going to tune your truck, it's a very good idea to have a way to monitor the systems on it. And so that's kind of the process I'm going through right now of installing different sensors on the truck so I can monitor things. Last video, again, I did an EGT probe. This video, you could probably tell by the title, throwing on a fuel pressure sensor. And I'll say on these 5.9 common rails, and honestly, I think every single diesel truck out there, you would benefit from having a fuel pressure sensor on it. These fuel pumps, CP3 in this case, are not cheap. They are very expensive pumps, and you want to make sure they're getting adequate fuel pressure. It'd be something that's cheap to do now and cost you a lot in the long run if you're not paying attention to it. So either way, even if I wasn't tuning this truck, I would still be putting a fuel pressure sensor on it. It's just one of those things that's very good to have. Not to mention, having the ability to read these things makes diagnosing problems a heck of a lot easier. You can know whether, if the truck's not starting, you can rule out very quickly, is it getting fuel or is it not getting fuel? Is it getting fuel to the high pressure oil, to the high pressure pump? Yes, no. If not, you guys kind of get my point. It makes diagnosing things a lot easier, and it helps make sure you can keep your truck on the road longer. So I'm going to be installing this on my 5.9 06 5.9 Cummins. Like in my last video, I showed you guys I have the Edge I showed you guys I had the Edge Insight, which uses their EAS system. So I went through and I picked up their expansion kit, which basically, let me show you guys here, 2 more dongles to hook up to and the wiring you needed if you're installing your own sensors. And then I also picked up their pressure sensor. I don't know if it's still this way. Originally, they only listed this pressure sensor on their website as a air pressure sensor. A lot of people out there have run them as fuel pressure. I ran them on fuel pressure on my 7.3. It's probably been on that for 4 or 5 years now, and not a single issue. So I'm not worried about it. I don't know if they've updated their website or not. One of the reasons I like the Edge system is it makes it very, very simple to install new sensors. Now, I told you guys 06 5.9 Cummins. I do believe the 03 and 04 can be installed just the same way as this. We're hooking straight up to the CP3 pump or the inline to the CP3 pump to measure our lift pump pressure. I'm pretty sure the 03 to 04s are the same, or just about the same, minus where the lift pump is. I think the earlier ones have the lift pump on the block versus these in the tank. Not 100% sure. If I'm wrong, correct me down in the comments. But as far as measuring the sensor, or measuring the lift pump pressure goes, you should be able to do it just the same way. Depending on what truck you have and what year truck you have, it may be different, newer, older, but it's pretty easy to find a spot to find or plug into. Just look it up online. All right, moved over here into the sunshine. Getting a little chilly over there in the shade. I think what I was saying was, so where I'm going to be installing this, or my fuel pressure sensor, is on the banjo bolt to the CP3, the feed line into the CP3. So to do that, you either need to buy a tapped banjo bolt or you tap the one you have. I ended up just going and buying a tapped one. I used Goward, or I don't know how you pronounce it, but I'll put a link down below. Goward Garage. Looks like the part number's there. And so what that is, is a banjo bolt that you see here, but you can see on the end that it is tapped. It has a plug in it right now, but that's the 1/8 inch NBT tapped threads, so you can just put your fuel pressure sensor straight into there. A lot of people say you need to put a, or they recommend putting an extension hose on it to kind of reduce the vibrations. They said that on the 732. Again, my fuel pressure sensor's been running fine for the last 4 or 5 years, no issue, so I'm not overly concerned about it. If it ever fails, I'll let you guys know, but I don't think it will. So we're going to be plugging this replacing the factory banjo bolt with this banjo bolt, screwing the fuel pressure sensor into the back side of this, and then we're just running the wires, plugging it in, and it's good to go. So it should be a pretty simple job. This is the snubber valve, or snubber version of it, which means there's no, I would show you, but there's no way you're going to be able to see it, but there's a very tiny hole inside there to kind of help reduce the spikes of fuel pressure, because fuel pumps, they go up and down. I'm not talking physically, but fuel pressure, it goes up and down, and so this is to try to reduce the spikes that are actually hitting your sensor. So that little hole kind of helps just even it out. So I went up with the snubber version of it. Gord has a high flow version of it that I actually bought on accident, and then ended up ordering this one instead. I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference or not, but I figure it's basically the same thing, basically the same price, might as well do it. And then this one comes with the 2 O-rings that you need for the top and bottom of the banjo bolt. So I think that's all the talking that needs to be done right now. I'm trying to minimize the talking on these videos. So let me show you guys the CP3, and then we're just going to get to work. All right, so guys, up here in the engine bay on the driver's side of the block, have your CP3 pump right down here. This is the feed line coming into the CP3. So what I'm going to do is take out this banjo bolt, replace it with a new one, and we should be good to go. I have my edge plug in right there, so I just tie straight into that, add on to that sensor. I mean, honestly, it is that simple. If it's not, something pops up, I'll let you know, but it should be very simple. It goes without saying, this is past your fuel filter, so make sure it is clean. You do not want dirt and grime and stuff getting into your fuel system at this point, because it'll go straight through your injection pump and into your injectors. And with a common rail like this, you don't want that. So I'm going to try to prop you guys up in a way that you can see it, and I'm just going to see if I can knock this out real quick. Alright, got the old one off. You got the bottom washer or seal, and then we got the top one right up there. So I'm going to take those off. Actually, I don't even need to, but there's the old one. Alright, so that's on. Obviously, it goes without saying you don't want to cross-thread this. And they also have it in very big, bold letters to torque to 19 foot-pounds and no more, or do not exceed 19 foot-pounds. The last thing you want to do is mess up the threads on your CP3 pump. That feels pretty snug, even though it didn't pop. That's a very large wrench putting pressure on it, so I'm going to err on the side of caution. If it leaks, we can always tighten it up a little more. Alright, so I am opting to not use any Teflon tape on that, even though it's an MPT thread. To me, it is too risky to get a piece of Teflon in this fuel system, so I think it should be totally fine without it. We're going into brass threads, so I'm not too concerned about it. I'll just snug this up. Shouldn't have to be too tight. That feels good. And that's that. I am going to go start the engine and see if we have any leaks. You guys watch it. If we do, give me a holler. But if not, then I'm not going to make you guys watch me run the wiring. I'm going to get that done, and I'll catch you whenever I'm done with that. All right. let's go see if we got some leaks. Alright, all looks good. Alright, so unfortunately, I don't have my wire loom with me, so at a later date, I'm going to go through and clean up all this excess wire. But nonetheless, we can still hook it up. Okay, guys, got it all wired up. It was a little tricky. Something I haven't run into in the past. The plug that came on the fuel pressure sensor did not line up or did not pin out with the plug on the EAS adapter kit. So I ended up cutting the wires, which worked out fine anyway because I had a ton of excess and I needed to trim it up. But I ended up cutting the wires and resplicing them together to the new plug that came with the EAS kit. So I think it should all work just fine. But we're going to find out. The only reason I think I might not have run into this in the past was before I got the EAS competition kit, where it all came with a pyrometer, a fuel pressure sensor, and a temperature probe. So that all came in as a kit by itself, and so maybe it was all designed obviously to work together, versus the EAS kit or universal EAS kit wasn't necessarily designed to work with the pressure sensor, but it should technically just work fine. For whatever reason, the plugs were just different. So like I said, I had to cut the wires anyways to shorten them up, so we're going to see if it works. I'm going to turn you guys around so you guys can see the screen as I'm kind of walking through the setup process. We're going to go for it. So, the last time I did the fuel pressure, or the pyrometer, I had to restart it. So we might end up having to do that. Yeah, it kind of looks like we might have to. So let me unplug it and plug it back in, and I'll get right back to you guys. Starting back up here. Yep, there we go. So I just had to restart it again. Looks like that's probably pretty standard. So it says new EAS device detected. Would I like to configure it now? Yes. Universal input. Yes. Input A is what I put it on. And we're going to go display name. We're going to go fuel. PSI. I'm going to save that. Display units. We're going to go with PSI. Scaling. It's a pressure sensor. 0 to... Not sure what the difference between PSI A and PSI G would be, so we'll try PSI A, and let's try saving that. We'll take our double click on the air intake temperature. Let's see if we can replace that with fuel pressure. So under the advanced PIDs, we got that. We got our sensor A selected. We'll save that and see how it comes up. Alright, so it's showing 3.5, which means the scaling might be wrong here. So let me play around with it for a minute and then I'll give you guys an update. Alright guys, here we go. Got it all set up. You can see fuel pressure down there in the bottom right corner, showing just under 6 PSI. Raises up a bit if I give it a little bit of throttle. but then eventually will start reducing with enough throttle as you'd expect. To be honest, this was a little lower of a pressure than I was expecting. I guess what I should tell you is, to get it to read the right pressure, I had it originally at 0 to 50 psi, bumped it up to the 0 to 100 psi. It was basically just cutting the units in half at the 0 to 50. So stock CP3 or the stock lift pump on these trucks, from what I'm seeing online, should be right around 6 to 8 or 5 to 8 psi. So mine seems to be on the lower end, which again is another great reason to have a fuel pressure sensor, because I had no idea. The truck seems to run totally fine, and up until now I didn't know that I was on the lower end of the fuel pressure going to the lift pump. So of course I'm glad I have the fuel pressure gauge on it now. I'm going to drive it around for a bit, of course, before I put the tunes on. Like I said in my last video, I want to get an idea of how the truck behaves totally stock before I start putting tunes on it. So I'm going to drive it around as is, keep an eye on the fuel pressure, see what the fuel pressure does under heavy throttle. I do have plans on putting an Air Dog lift pump on this at some point down the road. Mainly it's just kind of a pain in the butt for me to do myself, so I'm waiting for a good opportunity to do it. I already have the pump, just waiting to get it done. That should completely solve any of the lift pump issues and pressure issues that I might have. If I had to guess, I would guess that this will drop pretty darn low under full throttle. If it's at idle around 6.5 psi, I would bet this thing probably drops pretty low or pretty close to 0 under full throttle, which obviously is not something we want, not something I want. So I'm going to keep an eye on it, see how the truck behaves, see what the fuel pressure looks like as it is stock. If it's dropping low enough, I'm not going to put tunes on it until I get the lift pump on. There's no point in trying to have fun and get power out of this thing and ruin my CP3 just because I'm throwing tunes on it. I'm not really one to horse around and really play around with the trucks much, but if the stock lift pump is not supporting the stock settings to the fullest that it could be, then there's no point in really throwing tunes on it and ruining a good CP3. So we're going to see how it plays out and see how the truck behaves. All in all, easy install. I would have been done in probably 45 minutes if I wasn't filming and if I didn't have to do that rewire. Now that I know that, I would definitely recommend anybody getting the Edge CTS system, which I think is awesome, just to pick up the competition bundle. All in all, it's a better deal to do that. The reason I'm hesitant to it, because I don't really use the temperature sensor. Most trucks already have a trans temp sensor, so I didn't really have a good use for it. I could use it as a water temp sensor, but that's kind of why I didn't pick it up. But as far as getting 3 sensors go, it actually is a better deal to get the competition system. And now that I know that you have to splice in the new plug, I'm just going to go ahead and say you're better off getting the Edge CTS and buying the competition system, and you'll be good to go for your EGT gauge, fuel pressure gauge, and if you want to add a water sensor or a temperature sensor down the road, then you can add that one in wherever you want it. Or you could just scrap the water sensor and use the third input for whatever other sensor you want to add. Maybe a second EGT gauge, I don't know. But yeah, all in all, easy install. That's why I like Edge plug and play. Didn't have to run any wires into the cab, super easy. It all stays under the hood. Like I said, I don't have wire loom here, so I'm going to go through down the road, clean up the wiring a little bit more, loom it up so it doesn't quite stand out nearly as much in the engine bay. Not that anybody's looking in the engine bay other than me, just a more personal preference. I want to try to keep it as clean as possible. So if any of you guys are curious on how to put a fuel pressure sensor onto these trucks, easy way to do it right here. Fuel systems are not cheap. You want to take care of them the best you can. And this is great for reassurance that you're taking care of it. Great for problem solving if you ever have problems. With that, I'm going to wrap up this video. If I missed anything, or if you have any comments or suggestions, please put them down in the description below. Either they'll help me or they'll help somebody else that's watching. If you guys found the video helpful or useful, hit the thumbs up button. It makes a huge difference on the channel, gets these videos out to a lot more people, helps the channel grow, which the more the channel grows, the more people get to watch it. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you guys on the next video.